Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're grabbing a sledgehammer and taking a swing at one of the most exhausting, honestly toxic concepts of our modern era, and that is the hustle culture definition of discipline. You know the one? We're constantly bombarded by this idea that to be successful, you've got to completely sacrifice your sleep, your peace, and your sanity right at the altar of productivity. But what if that entire premise is just fundamentally flawed? Well, today we're exploring the architecture of balanced intent. We're going to deconstruct the source material behind this incredibly powerful concept and rebuild a much healthier, far more sustainable framework for exactly how we should approach our ambitions.
Push harder, do more, don't stop. I mean, you've probably heard this a million times, right? It's the standard rallying cry of every internet life coach shouting at you from a rented Lamborghini. But I want you to ask yourself a really honest question right now. Is this relentless mindset actually getting you to where you want to be? Or is it the literal root cause of your burnout and daily suffering? We're so conditioned to believe that discipline is just this one-way street of endless acceleration. But the text we're analyzing today makes a really compelling argument. This incomplete version of discipline is exactly why so many highly driven people are absolutely miserable.
Okay, let's dive into this, because we're setting up a really critical contrast here. On side A, we've got pushing, which is all about pure intensity. And on side B, we have pausing, which is entirely driven by intention. The source material presents a massive paradigm shift here. True discipline isn't just about knowing how to push. It's equally about knowing when to pause. It's recognizing that grinding away without any direction is really just highly efficient suffering. So we're going to explore how true suffering in our lives almost always stems from a lack of balance between these two exact extremes. Basically, either we start way too late or we simply never learn how to stop.
So let's look at that first extreme. Section 1, the cost of starting late or the silent suffering.
You know, a lot of us suffer really quietly just because we delay taking action. We avoid putting in the hard effort. Maybe we're terrified of failing, or maybe we just convince ourselves that we're waiting for that perfect, magical, right time to finally launch the business, or make the investment, or even just have that difficult conversation. But what actually happens when we delay? Well, first off, we face missed opportunities. The world definitely doesn't pause just because we're feeling hesitant. I mean, think about that brilliant idea you had a few years ago, only to watch someone else execute it a year later. It hurts, right? Second, this avoidance almost always snowballs into severe financial stress. And finally, you get hit with the heaviest burden of the whole group, deep regret. The source points out that not starting is actually a form of silent suffering. It's quiet because, well, you aren't actively failing in public, but internally, the anxiety and the what-ifs are just slowly eating away at you. Avoiding effort doesn't keep you safe, it literally just guarantees these heavy compounding consequences.
Now moving to the other end of the spectrum. Section 2, the trap of never stopping, or the loud suffering. Let's flip the script for a second. This is the chaotic, highly visible suffering of the person who just literally does not know when to hit the brakes. Think of the entrepreneur obsessively checking emails under the dinner table, or the professional who just keeps grinding long after they've actually achieved their initial goals. Continuing without purpose, as the source clearly states, is absolutely a form of suffering too. When you're endlessly chasing more and constantly comparing yourself to everyone else and tying your entire self-worth strictly to what you can produce, you are going to run straight into a brick wall. We're talking total burnout, a sharp health decline, strained or completely broken relationships, and honestly, the tragic psychological state of never ever feeling like you're enough. You might have all the flashy external markers of success, but internally, your engine is completely redlining.
And this brings us to a really fascinating concept from the text called the money paradox. Look, if you start too late, your life becomes completely defined by struggle and insecurity. But if you never stop making money, your life becomes defined by exhaustion and emptiness. The paradox here is that if we fail to balance these two extremes, money actually shifts from being a tool that buys us freedom into a trap of endless pursuit. You basically end up being owned by the exact thing you thought would set you free.
So how do we fix this? Section 3, redefining discipline as intention.
So, the crucial point is, we desperately need a new operating system. We just can't survive on the old definitions anymore. We're pivoting away from the problem now and introducing the evolved, sustainable framework that the source material lays out. If pushing harder isn't the answer, and doing absolutely nothing leaves us filled with regret, what exactly does true discipline look like? Well, discipline is the ability to act with intention, not just intensity. Really let that sink in. Intensity is just raw horsepower. Intention is your steering wheel, your GPS, and your brakes, all rolled into one. True discipline means doing exactly what must be done when the time calls for it, sure, but it also requires the profound wisdom to know when enough actually is enough. It's a highly conscious, deliberate way of moving through the world, rather than just blindly reacting to everything thrown at you.
To actually embrace this, we have to completely reframe the very act of stopping. I promise you, stepping away from your laptop is not going to cause the universe to collapse. Stopping is not laziness. It is definitely not giving up. It's an active, required mechanism for recovery, reflection, and recalibration. Look, in our hyper-connected world, we've totally stigmatized resting, but stepping back is actually a high-performance habit. When you pause, you're finally giving your brain the essential space it needs to reflect on the data, figure out if you're even still heading in the right direction, and recalibrate your strategy.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this process works by comparing it to physical training. Think about it. There are 3 steps: effort, recovery, and growth. The source points out a basic biological fact here. When you lift weights in the gym, you aren't actually growing muscle during the effort itself. You're just tearing muscle fibers down. The actual growth, that only happens during the recovery phase. If you skip recovery, you don't magically get stronger. You just get injured. And the exact same principle applies to your career, your finances, and your mental health. The growth happens in the pause.
Let's put this into practice. Section 4. The mental model for balance. Knowing all this theory is great, but how do we actually apply it to our daily lives? Well, the source material equips us with a highly practical set of questions. Think of this mental model as your new internal compass. When you're trying to figure out if you need to finally start something, ask yourself, is this the right time to take action, or am I avoiding something important? I really want you to think about that for a second. Are you genuinely researching and preparing, or are you just hiding? This specific question forces some really deep self-reflection. It cuts right through the little lies we tell ourselves to justify our procrastination, and it pulls us right out of that silent suffering of inaction.
And then, on the flip side, here is your vital check for when you actually need to stop. Ask yourself, am I still growing or just grinding? Is this aligned with my life or am I just chasing more? Take a real breath and look at your current trajectory. Are the sacrifices you're making today actually yielding meaningful growth, or are you literally just running on a treadmill because you're terrified to step off? This question directly challenges our priorities and snaps us right out of the loud suffering of endless pursuit.
As we pull all of these concepts together, we uncover the much deeper truth of the source material. Look at the balance required here. Too little effort leads straight to regret, but too much effort leads straight to burnout. The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is that life isn't just this game of blindly maximizing your output to the absolute limit. It's a nuanced, ongoing practice of optimizing your balance. It's about steering carefully right down the middle, avoiding the ditch of laziness on one side of the road and the ditch of sheer exhaustion on the other.
We're going to close out our explainer today with this profound final thought directly from the text. I will work hard when it is time to work, and I will step back when it is time to live. Honestly, that kind of balance is incredibly rare in today's world. It requires a tremendous amount of self-awareness. But mastering this architecture of balanced intent, knowing exactly when to push forward with all your might and when to proudly, unapologetically pause, is exactly what separates a merely driven life from a truly fulfilled one. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Before you go, I want to challenge you to ask yourself, is it time for you to work right now, or is it time for you to live?